Hello, Avatar fans, and welcome to the next episode of the Avatar Online podcast. This is going to be episode 215 of our regular shows, and we're recording this one on July 26th, 2020. This is the official podcast for the fan site, AvatarTheLastAirbenderOnline.com. I'm going to be your main host, Morgan Airspeed Prime, and joining me on the podcast is Greg2B from the site.
What's up, everyone?
Excellent. So this is primarily going to be a news show. I suppose you could more or less treat it as being our sort of Comic-Con news show, but it's mostly news from the past couple of weeks, just focused on the recent news that we've had. If you're wondering why the Shadow of Kyoshi is out, why isn't this the first Shadow of Kyoshi review? Obviously, it's still very early. The book only came out like 5 days ago, and while I feel okay about it and stuff like that, not that many other people have read the book just yet, so we're just going to leave that until the next podcast to start off with. But once we do, we'll jump into that. I think before we even planned it, really, it's probably going to be 3 podcasts. We'll split the book into thirds like we did with the first one. There's a very clear, points I think in this book where we can pick those different sections, because there's enough here to discuss, I think, across 3 podcasts. But that's what we'll be doing over the next few podcasts, but we're here to discuss the news primarily. So I suppose we'll start with the Avatar Comic-Con panel. So we knew we were getting this. This was announced a bunch of weeks ago. Comic-Con at home. It's going to be a video that they put out, and it was pre-recorded. We knew going in it was going to be pre-recorded, so I guess they recorded this like a week or 2 beforehand. And we got it. The description of this panel was basically the same as every previous SDCC and NYCC panel, Avatar Legacy panel. It was Mike DiMartino, FCE, Faith Erin Hicks, and Jean Yang, plus also the Dark Horse moderator. 40 minutes, I think, was the runtime on it, and there was like no fan interaction, of course, because it was pre-recorded, and they didn't, before the panel, ask for any questions from the fandom. So it was just 40 minutes of creator discussion, and as expected, not really a news panel at all. Tiny little bits of information that sort of led to us finding out actual news came out of it, but for the most part this was very, very similar styles of discussion to the previous year's panels, where they're just kind of vaguely promoting their books, not talking about them in particular detail, just the Dark Horse panel moderator asking more or less the same questions we get every time. How did you get into Avatar? How did you get into working on the comics? What was it like to be contacted about that stuff? And so on. And for a panel that featured Mike, of course, it was kind of interesting how they didn't really cover that much stuff. The only real news to take from this was that they brought up some of the books coming out, including like re-releases, and they mentioned the Avatar art book, and I think Jean Yang mentioned that, like, oh, Team Gurahuru are doing a new cover, which I was like, what? Team Gurahuru are doing a cover for the art book, which is still kind of up in the air if that's true or not, but if you look at the new description for the second edition of the art book, you can maybe see where that is. So they didn't actually say anything in terms of news at the panel, but it led to us sort of finding out those extra details about the art book. Beyond that, there was a slight tease that Faith Erin Hicks kind of mentioned that like she's written 6 Avatar comics when, as of right now, there's only 5 accounted for. But I think given the most recent comic announcement, we can assume that there's going to be a 3rd one-shot Avatar comic. Beyond that, it was just the standard stuff. So, Greg, what are your thoughts on what we got out of this panel?
I mean, from the news that got out, I guess it's probably as much as we really could expect with the recent way that they have been releasing the information on news and the comics and any of the other sort of like art books and re-editions to them. It's really sort of, I guess, piecemeal, you could say, in terms of what they let out pretty much when they're ready to actually, say something, or they have it, almost completely done is when they're announcing the information. So the Toph book, we have like the description and we have like the cover. So it's, it's pretty much at the point where it's almost ready to go, which is when we're sort of finally learning about it, which I would suspect would be the same about the next book, which, as we're assuming, will probably be a one shot, and anything else that comes after that.
Yeah, and that's important to note is that the morning before the panel, we did get, I suppose, it's always weird to talk about like a listing going up as being news because clearly the TOF comic still hasn't been officially announced yet, in that none of the actual like main like social media channels have talked about it yet, but us as fans have, taken it all in. That came out beforehand, and we're kind of wondering, oh, so are they going to talk about this at the panel? But they didn't. And then it's hard to tell if, like, when Faith Aaron Hicks towards the end of the panel mentioned that, like, oh, I've just submitted a script, an Avatar script for a review. Was she talking about the Toph book or the one after that? Because, like, I suppose the writing process of the script, like, I suppose would be done before pretty much all of the art. So, given that there's a cover for the Toph book, it probably is the one afterwards. But again, that's just the sort of weird planning that the way the moderator of the panel was talking, they were clearly aware of like news or things that were going to be live at in or around the time the panel went live, but then nothing actually properly happened except the cover for the art book, which was kind of weird. But we'll get into talking about now the details of this Avatar: The Last Airbender Art of the Animated Series 2nd edition. Now, we've talked about this before when it was first announced, and the description read as just a reprint with a new introduction, like foreword from Gene Yang, which is just kind of like, okay, one page, I guess they're replacing the M. Night Shyamalan page with the Gene Yang page. That's fine, but it looks the same. Now it's revealed that this 2nd edition is like a deluxe edition. That's what they're calling it. It's a deluxe 2nd edition. There's some new stuff as well. It says here, where is it? It now includes a stunning new cover art by Brian Konietzko, 8 pages of new material, an all-new introduction by award-winning Avatar comic series writer Gene Yang, plus it also features a newly designed slipcase, a collectible art lithograph, an extra special cover treatment, and also in a description somewhere else it says like the pages are going to have like gilded edges and a ribbon kind of bookmarker. So they're giving this the full, I suppose, presentation treatment with some new pages. I suppose just based off that description, what are your thoughts on this 2nd edition? They're actually doing a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I mean, this sounds like it's actually worth having a 2nd edition of, compared to the other one that we've known about so far. So, no, this definitely seems pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to buy a whole nother one, just for these changes in it, but I think if you don't have one and you have the option of getting this one versus the other one, this one definitely seems like the one to get for sure.
Yeah, like we have the new cover. It's a really nice piece of art by Brian Konietzko. Aang in the Avatar state. It's Sozin's comet Aang, full, Avatar, spheres of elements thing going on here. It's the complete contrast to the first cover for this book, which I think is really nice. This one's all like red, whereas the other one's kind of more blue. And then, like I said at the panel, Gene Yang seemed to imply that Team Guru Huru have worked on some sort of a piece of art for this book, which I guess could either be the cover for the slipcase or they are the ones doing the collectible art lithograph. So that's going to be interesting to see. In that, like, as far as I'm aware, like slipcase, I'm not sure if they mean sort of like, is that going to be like a dust cover style thing for the hardcover, or actually like a box that you slide the book into. Because if it's that actually seems really nice. That like it kind of protects your fancy book that's going to have these kind of like shiny pages on the outside. And then like they say special cover treatment, which I guess means that the Brian Konietzko cover is going to be like embossed in some way or something like that.
Yeah, or shiny, or
yeah, like different than their typical hardcover style stuff. But yeah, I think there's value in this because it comes with I guess a box or a dust cover. The lithograph I think is a nice thing of just it comes with an art kind of collectible, which I hope they show off what that is, especially if it is Team Guru Huru. I'd like to see more of their art. And then it does say 8 pages of new material, which I'm guessing links into the fact that it's Gene Yang doing the foreword now, and that it probably is 8 pages covering the comics. Because when the book initially came out, it was prior to any of the comics being released, and
Yeah.
the art book doesn't feature anything about the comics. So 8 pages to cover like the show continues via the comics for a 2020 edition. That seems actually the way to go. But we don't know that for sure. But what would be your guess on the 8 pages of new material?
Yeah, I mean, with him being in it, that's the only other sort of like new content that I could see would be worth adding to it. I think it'll be interesting to see how they add that to just the art book in general. Are they just going to sort of focus in on the art, or are they going to include some of, just, explaining that that's like actually how the story continues and stuff? I think that could be cool just to see how they break that down.
Yeah, I suppose the other option is that like because of like I suppose DVD and Blu-ray re-releases, there's also been like extra promotion art as well that's
Mm.
come out. So it might be that maybe plus some stuff on the comics. Either way, this now goes from being just like sort of forgettable. Okay, they're releasing the book again to being like okay, they're doing something very very fancy with it.
Hmm.
I'm pretty much just waiting to see like okay, is there new art on the slipcase as well as the cover as well as the lithograph? Then it might actually be worth getting. But yeah, that's out 24th of November, so there's a few months left until that comes out, and I assume there probably is some sort of a news article coming out at some point to announce some of the stuff that we will talk about in a second, and that might cover this as well. So the other thing, like we already talked about, there is a new Toph comic that's been announced. I say announced. Penguin Random House once again have gotten ahead of whatever website's exclusive reveal and put up the details already. When we first got this, it didn't have the full product description. It didn't have the blurb about the comic. Now we have that. So yesterday it was a lot of just speculation about like, oh, what is it exactly? Is it going to be about? Now we have a sense for like, okay, this is what it is. So it's by Faith Aaron Hicks and Peter Wortman, so same creative team as Katara and the Pirate Silver. It is a one shot because it doesn't mention part one, part two, or anything like that. And the description is: for some, perfection just isn't enough. Things are looking bright at the Beifong Metal Bending Academy, but after all the adventures Toph's had with Aang, Sokka, Zuko, and Katara, the whole thing feels a bit dull. Luckily, Sokka and Suki come to visit and reintroduce some familiar faces from their wandering days. And while out and about to celebrate, Toph discovers something that might just put the sparkle back in her eye. And then once again we get the whole written by Faith Aaron Hicks, drawn by Peter Wortman, colors by Adele Matera, and collaboration with Tim Hedrick again, so not Mike O'Brien there. That was the same as the Guitar book, that bit at the end. But yeah, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy is our new one-shot book coming out in February 2021, so 4 months after the Katara book. This is what we're getting. So this is a series of comics we're getting. We don't know how long it's going on for, but like we said, the estimation is probably at least 3. There's at least going to be another one because they're going to want to collect these into a hardcover at some point, and they need at least 3, I think, to do that. But what are your thoughts on this? This is the sort of almost unexpected announcement, given that we were more expecting a Korra comic announcement before this. But what are your thoughts on Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy?
I mean, it sounds cool. I think, I don't know, I feel like people are like sort of like half this is cool, half this is like but it's not necessarily what we really sort of wanted. I think, the idea and concept behind it, I think is cool. I mean, the idea of finding out more information about her metal bending academy, I think is definitely cool. Just as far as, Toph being, fan favorite character. So like, it's kind of hard to go wrong from that perspective. Could this have been something, or, we've seen bits and pieces of, how she's run the academy, in other stories. So it's not like we don't have any idea about, how she's doing or anything like that. We know, eventually she gets more students and, things sort of progress. But I guess it seems like this is something where it seems like there's just enough, and it's interesting that they have Sokka and Suki in here, so that's cool. We're always talking about Suki and giving her, more play in the comics, so that's definitely a welcome sight to see. So I don't know, I think it's definitely gonna be worth reading and checking out. I guess it'll just be interesting just to see overall how it's received.
Yeah, like yesterday before we had the description, like there was a bit of a discussion about like, okay, when is this going to be set? Like, is it post imbalance? That's the interesting
Hmm.
time period, or is it like in between some of the comics? And that like it has to be set after the promise because otherwise, Penga, Hotun, and the Dark One can't metal bend.
Yeah.
So there's no way to celebrate in that case. So it's either going to be in between the Promise and the Rift, or between the Rift and North and South, because her students are in those three books. Um, I still, from the description, don't get a sense for exactly when it's going to be set at all. So that's something interesting. But we do see from the cover that her three students are in it. We know there are other students as well, and that if depending on where it's set, those three are also sort of assistant teachers as well. So it'll be interesting to see if they introduce more students, or if this is set in a period where those three are still the only metal benders. It probably is more interesting to do it if there are more people, and that allows us to see the other three students in more of a leadership position, I guess, given that they're still notable as being Metal Bender number 2, 3, and 4 in the universe. So that's cool. And then, yeah, I think the fact that Sokka and Suki are in this definitely pushes it over the edge, because of course Sokka was involved with them in the Promise, and then I suppose Suki came in later and didn't really interact with them. But the interesting part of this is definitely those two come to visit and reintroduce some familiar faces from their wandering days. It's kind of weirdly worded, like wandering days. I guess that's just Team Avatar traveling. And then is it specific to like post Suki joining the group, or do they just mean it could be any character from the entire journey? And who's going to be significant to arriving that could Sokka and Suki could have met? That's cool. It means we're going to get to see some other minor characters. I'd immediately maybe lean towards like some earthbender of some sort, like Haru. It'd be interesting to see his thoughts on the Metal Bending Academy. Maybe the Duke, since if they're going to be really heavy on the continuity, I guess the Duke and Toph get on very well. The Toph ship, maybe that's a thing. Um, Beyond that, it's kind of hard to predict, because if it is post Suki joining the group, it's like Chit Sang is about like the only character I can really think of. Um, but what are your thoughts on that middle part of the description there? What characters might they reintroduce here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone. I mean, I guess from like the whole Earth Rumble, that would be fun just to see them in general and how they are, interact with Toph now that she's, I guess, more in an upstanding position or anything like that. I don't know, I think that could be cool for sure. But I mean, anyone from, the Earth Kingdom would be fun to see how they interact here. And, if they do have more of the students there, would, someone else that that knows earthbending, would they try to join her metal bending academy? That might be a fun sort of like side thing just to see how she gets on with them in that sort of regard.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like, while out to celebrate, Toph discovers something that might just put the sparkle back in her eye. Like it really could be anything, I suppose. If it's set more in balance time, I suppose we're looking at like might something relating to being a police officer, some way to advance her metal bending come into play. Like I suppose at some point we have to introduce the whole metal whip kind of thing into that the metal bending police officers use. Might she figure that out? It's hard to exactly tell. Other ideas for the characters, like the freedom fighters, like Smellerby, Longshot, I suppose would be in or around here, because they were in the Promise, in or around the general area, so they might come back into things. That could be fun. But yeah, do you have any ideas about like what would put the sparkle back in Toph's eye? Something.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, other than what you have said, anything, I don't know. I mean, I guess, it could be anything sort of like, just battle oriented or just, something new, as far as like earth bending or metal bending goes, that could be something that would be interesting enough. I mean, this, the whole idea of this definitely seems like something that, Saki and Suki would be around to sort of help talk with just because they seem like they're the type of characters that would be involved in sort of like, figuring out things or invigorating, someone's spirit that, that feels like Saki to me.
Yeah, yeah. There's obviously potential is that she finds another metal bending recruit. Like, might this be metal bender number five? That'd be something interesting if it is more set like earlier, and it still is just the three, but now they're really good. That she finds her fourth student, and that character becomes interesting. But it says thing instead of someone, so it could be anything. But yeah, it is interesting just that the next announcement, like the first new comic of 2021, is a one shot, and realistically, the next Avatar comic after this is also going to be a one shot. I guess Aang, Zuko, we'll see if they're willing to maybe put like a minor character on the cover of one of these books and do a solo story like that. Um, it definitely opens the door that like okay, the Katara book is very Katara focused, but this one is like Toph, but with Sokka and Suki, so it doesn't have to just be all about one character. But do you have any ideas about the potential third one shot? Like what character you think they might decide to focus on?
That's a good one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would be funny if they did just, continue somehow from this story into something with Sokka and Suki as far as like them having, their own sort of story. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they would go that sort of route. I mean, the whole idea of, I guess, Aang or Zuko being in their own sort of like one shot. I mean, that definitely has the potential to do it, but I feel like I don't know, I feel like they tend to reserve them for like the bigger stories, when they have to use them or whatever, so I'm not sure.
Because obviously, it's something like this that people will be a lot more interested if this was like Avatar: The Last Airbender, something something Iroh, and it was Iroh on
Hmm.
the cover. Like immediately, like why not tell like a bit of Iroh backstory in one of these books? Uh, he sells stuff for sure. Like I think I guess his Funko Pop is probably the Avatar one that maybe sells the most and stuff like that. But are they maybe afraid to put out something that maybe might not feature the other characters so much? That's what we'll have to see. Uh, I think they probably at this point kind of have to make it be like probably a Zuko one, just anything that will get us to the Fire Nation. To maybe okay, it's not the Azula story, but maybe this is the like Zuko interacting with Ki story. You could probably have Mei and Zuko get back together in a one shot if you wanted to. Focus on Ursa some, just more light-hearted stuff in the Fire Nation, and then save Azula for the next time we go back there properly. Um, that to me makes sense, but again, they're sort of all over the place with these. The Katara comic is confirmed now to be set in book two. This one is somewhere in the comic timeline. They could go anywhere with it. But
Yeah.
Fire Nation seems like a good opportunity to do something or something very different beyond that. We're still waiting for the Korra comic announcement. Arguably, that's the book we expected to be announced, like over the course of Comic Con, not the next Avatar book. But I guess we'll see when that happens. Like we have no news whatsoever. Like Mike during the panel really didn't say a lot. I suppose was probably the main thing from there. He probably knows everything he says is going to be analyzed, so he chose to not say that much. But like he didn't really talk about like his work on the Korra comics, so there was no there was no sense of like him like Faith Aaron Hicks talking about writing scripts or anything like that. So it's hard to say like either way. Like is he just being very very coy and secretive about something he is working on, or is he just not working on something? Because like there might be a writer, there might be an artist change for the next Korra book, but they have confirmed there's some sort of Korra announcement coming. We'll just have to wait and see on that. And I suppose with the Toph book as well, like I said, it hasn't been announced yet, so we are still waiting for like whichever website got the exclusive on this, whether it be like comic book resources, IGN, whatever,
Hmm.
that might reveal something to us. So I don't know. Do you have much hope for there being more news with whatever announcement the Toph comic is part of?
I don't know, except for like, samples or anything like that, preview pages. I don't know how much more they really need to do for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously, like to whatever website it is, like they're just going to like utterly ignore the fact that this listing has gone up, and they're still going to go ahead with they have the exclusive. Uh, I doubt there'll be anything more than what went along with the Katara announcement, but who knows? Like the fact that it seems like there was meant to be some sort of announcement about the full scope of the new art book, second edition. That's something, and then we'll see whenever they finally decide to announce the next Korra comic. Especially with how like heavy they've been on promoting the Turf Wars readings. I kind of maybe expected them to be a little bit more open about the Korra side of things, but well, we're just waiting. Um, Next up is speaking of Legend of Korra, it is coming to Netflix in America also. So this announcement, let me get back to it here. Next on Netflix on Twitter, official account here. She's the Avatar. You got to deal with it. Legend of Korra is coming to Netflix on August 14th in the US. So yeah, that's big news. Obviously, I sort of underestimated the Avatar return to Netflix reveal, and it's been huge for the popularity of the series. But now the other show is coming as well, and obviously in the comments of this, there's already the debate back and forth. Avatar's better, Korra's better, and the debate happening once again. But this is a good sign. I wonder how big of a boost this will be when August 14th hits. I doubt it will be as big as when Avatar came back, but I suppose this will also bring Avatar back into the top 10 potentially again, because I think it broke a record recently of like, what was it, 61 days in top 10 on Netflix, which is like the best ever or something like that. So this is very big. But what are your thoughts, Greg? Korra to Netflix.
No, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I think, I could see it, being pretty popular, and then, because of that, people also checking out Avatar just to see, what happened before it as well. So no, I think it's definitely going to be pretty cool to see, people rewatching again, all the sites doing like, the whole rewatch series on Korra as well. So no, I think it's definitely pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun when that comes out to see the Korra popularity. Maybe they might tie in a Korra comic announcement to that. Maybe they've planned out the Korra Netflix release a little bit better to have some news with it. That might be something. But next piece of news, The Shadow of Kyoshi is out now. The book came out on the 21st of July, so just the start of this week. That includes the audiobook, which I don't think we were quite expecting, but it actually came out. And in a really funny turn of events, the Shadow of Kyoshi audiobook came out before the Rise of Kyoshi audiobook, which was a very funny thing to see on Audible. The site that is listing both audiobooks as being only on Audible, which isn't true, for one, and then to have the 21st hit, and the Shadow of Kyoshi is available, but the Rise of Kyoshi is still on pre-order, and has the release date of like the 24th of July. But then I think they got some emails about it, and then the following day, on the 22nd, the Rise of Kyoshi audiobook was available. And I think the funniest thing of all was that they just said that the release date was the 22nd. So instead of just putting it live, realizing it was a mistake, and having the actual release date, they just said it was the 22nd. So the Rise of Kyoshi, the audiobook release, was a hilarious kind of mess from start to finish, in complete comparison to the Shadow of Kyoshi audiobook, which was like, it just came out unexpected. We thought it was out in October or something, but no, it's out. So that's cool. I suppose the other thing with this as well is that people got the deluxe edition of this from Barnes and Nobles, which did include some character images. There's like 2 of Kyoshi, 2 of Rangi, 2 of Yun, and then a couple of the trio together. So the main new thing with this was just that it was our first time seeing what Yun looks like, and I really liked the design that they did for him, of just a kind of young male earthbender, wearing sort of nice robes. It fit the character in the way that I saw him without being like over the top. But like, obviously the main thing here was it has to be different than Bolin. It has to be different than like Haru in terms of young Earthbenders, and they achieved that goal in my mind. So, what are your thoughts on the whole release of the Shadow of Kyoshi?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the art that's in the actual book, from what I've seen online, definitely looks pretty cool. I like, it fits the whole style of everything that they have been working and developing with so far. So I think that works cool. And yeah, no, the book release is definitely pretty cool. I guess it seems like some people are having a hard time getting it, but overall, I think, this, if you're willing to read it and you're able to, you can pretty much get it.
Yeah, the main thing with that is that, well, for one, the Rise of Kyoshi seems to actually be very difficult to get just full stop in terms of the book, because of course the paperback has been delayed into like this time next year for some reason.
Yeah.
The hardback seems to be sort of out of stock in most places as well. That was something I noticed in the build up to release, was that people were trying to get a hold of the first book but couldn't, so they had to go to audiobook and ebook. The ebook, of course, is only really available in, I think, USA. I think there might even be region restrictions for Canada. So the ebook is probably actually the most difficult way to actually get the book, unless you go through the whole process of like creating accounts and having an address from America and so on. The audiobook has the same thing, where it's like restricted in most regions unless you use like I think it's the Urban Audiobooks app is very easy to get around region restrictions, and you can do it the same on Audible, but you also have to change your address and so on. So it's just that weird thing of like the book technically doesn't have like a publisher, I suppose, in a lot of regions, so it's kind of imported into other regions, so it's not as readily available, which is just a general thing with, I suppose, the publisher, and that it's not the biggest one. So it's mainly just a problem for like international fans for the most part. It seemed like, once again, the book kind of released a little early from Barnes and Nobles, and a few people got it early. My copy also arrived
I saw
early.
that.
So I was able to get out a lot of my initial content. I've read the book. I'm a good way through my second reading, which is primarily the audiobook, to prepare myself for all the content that I'm doing. I already have like half of the chapter analysis videos recorded and so on. It's good without spoiling anything. I'll keep the discussion for the next podcast. But yeah, another successful book release for Avatar, and hopefully we get more announced, is probably the main thing to say there. Next piece of news is video game news. Once again, it's not what you think it is, but it's still interesting. There is Avatar and Korra content in the game Smite. So they had I guess it was like an Avatar Battle Pass or whatever they called it, as their kind of July update, and you could unlock. It was basically skins, but really fancy, like well done skins of characters, like Aang is like Merlin, I think, in the game. Korra is some other goddess in the game. And they really did a big job to like convert these kind of godlike characters in the game into the Avatar characters. Plus, there's a bunch of other stuff, like references, like there's I think Cabbage Merchant emote, an Appa thing you can get in the game. It looks like they really went all out in terms of just the animations, fitting them to the characters. But the game like isn't inherently anything about Avatar. It's just like a kind of marketing tie-in type thing. And I think you do have to pay to get the battle pass to get the new content, but it's cool. It's just, I think for a lot of people it was just kind of why not my favorite game instead of this one for Avatar content, but it's still cool. So what were your thoughts on Avatar and Korra content in Smite?
I didn't even think of that, but yeah, from everything that I've seen on it, there's tons of videos on YouTube breaking down all the characters and their movesets. A lot of it looks really good. I mean, it reminds me of, the Korra game that, you either really like or don't like or whatever, but, to have all of their move sets in there. They have them based off of, sort of the character and sort of their attire. So, for Aang, him being sort of early on and sort of airbending in the series and whatnot, they have him like not actually have a lot of moves with earthbending. I think there's only like maybe one move that has like earthbending around him, and like, of course the Avatar state, that has some earthbending in it, of course, versus Korra has like a lot of, her main moves that she's known for using, but not as much air. So it's pretty cool just to see how they translated the characters, how they did it with Zuko, how they have like, they have, a ton of different like voices, specific voice lines for the characters that are pretty like, if you watch the show at all, you'll pretty much, recognize almost all of the references that they use for the characters and any sort of line that they use. They have like different like announcer packs for, just general things that are said during the actual game. So, like double kill, triple kill, that sort of stuff that you're used to seeing in these type of MOBA games. So no, I think they definitely, from someone who doesn't play the game at all, it definitely seems like they went through a lot of effort to actually get them in there. I mean, they actually have, Korra's VA, actually in there voicing the lines, so that's pretty cool. And, they have other characters that, depending on your taste or how much attuned you are to the characters' voices, they either sound, pretty close to them or, near enough. It looks like they also did like an update to the characters' voices as well. So I guess they sort of like enhanced them, or they got different one. I didn't read all the patch notes that people were saying about how they actually went about the process of actually getting them. But no, I think they're definitely pretty cool, and the fact that they have like the second layer of the characters with the prestige skins, so it has them in sort of like the Avatar state and the blue spirit. So no, I think, I don't know, it definitely looks like it's pretty cool. I mean, it's too bad we don't have it, these characters in sort of like their own sort of dedicated game, because that would be pretty cool to see, as everyone always talks about. But no, I think they definitely did a good job putting them in there from what I can tell, at least.
Yeah, I think I saw like at least part of an interview with like the developers showing off the stuff, and you could tell they loved working on the Avatar stuff. They even put out like a pretty fancy like animated like video, sort of like, advertising revealing this for the first time. Like it had actual like animation. Obviously the voices weren't exact, but it was really nicely animated as like Aang and Zuko kind of come in and so on. So that was actually nice to see as well. But yeah, the main response to this was, I think, primarily just like, cool, but why are we sort of forever cursed to like never get like a good Avatar or Korra game? It's like everything else except this. And then like, of course, in like a few months we have the Nickelodeon Kart Racer 2 with the Avatar content in it as well. So we don't get to properly play as Aang and Korra, but we can race around Nickelodeon kart tracks if we want in a few months. That's just where we are right now, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the news. And last thing, I suppose, is just that the Rift Omnibus was announced. We don't have the new cover for this yet, but again, I think it was just announced for February next year. So this has a very similar release date to the Toph comic. So I think the way it's actually going to work out is that they're probably going to be released on the same day. So unless there's some delays that happens, that's the way it's working. So it looks like omnibuses are pretty much exactly every 4 months. So I suspect we'll get the Smoke and Shadow omnibus announced relatively soon. And then I think the last thing to say is just that since the last podcast as well, the Promise omnibus has actually come out. So I got my copy. I put up a video on it. It's what you expect it to be, but what we didn't know actually going in is that it does come with most of the art extras that's in the library edition. So you get the whole Promise sketchbook thing, except I think one of the pages, like the last page, just because of the page count, the way it works. But nothing in the description says that the book has it, but it actually does. So the only difference between the library edition and the omnibus is that obviously the pages are bigger in the library edition. It's a hardcover, and the annotations. Other than that, it's a really nicely done, cheap version to get all 3 parts of the comic. And then the other thing is that the spines, the way it's done, it looks like you're going to be able to stack the books side by side, and make a mosaic image of the characters across, I guess, the
Yeah.
first five books, because what they've done is they've sort of the image that it's going to make is the cover for the North and South Library Edition. So there's like it has like a slice of that on the cover for on the spine of this book, and I assume the Search Library Edition will have the next bit, and so on. So that seems at least something interesting. We'll see, I suppose, how it looks when we get to doing like the Imbalance one. I guess we'll start making the Imbalance Library Edition cover or something. But still, it's a cool little thing, for sure. But yeah, that's all the news that there has been so far. It's mainly just we're still waiting for like the big news, which I suppose is the next Korra trilogy, or whatever way they're going to do the next Korra comic. Will they do one shots for Korra or not? What's the creative team? Because of course, nothing has been said since about the live action show and the effect that that's having or not having. It's very difficult to predict right now, but you know, we'll see whenever that happens. I suppose final thing, Greg, is I suppose just what are your thoughts now? We've gone like past Comic-Con. When do you think the next Korra comic will be announced?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. I guess if we want to be hopeful, I would say, around October, maybe. Typical NYCC, which I guess will probably be similar to how SDC was set up with everything that's been going on. So I think maybe that would be a good, barometer point to hope for some news related to Korra, because it seems like it would give them a bit more time if things are already in development and they're just not ready to announce them now. That would be a good time to do it. Otherwise, I would expect some time early next year.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That like, okay, even if it doesn't make any sense, the Korra release on Netflix is going to be viewed as some opportunity for news to come out. Let's hope they have something planned there. If not, like you say, in or around New York Comic Con time, I'm guessing they'll probably also try to do some sort of a Comic Con at home type thing. So we might get another panel. We'll see. But yeah, other than that, it's kind of just that. Yeah, if there is a book and they have it planned, I would guess that the book would be planned for release probably like in or around like September next year would be, I suppose, the plan for the next Korra comic. So yeah, like towards the end of this year would be the time to do it. But again, no information whatsoever. There's not even like a tease that like Michelle Wong is working on an Avatar project. Same with Mike from this panel. So we just have no clue really. But yeah, like I said, next podcasts are going to be our Shadow of Kyoshi discussion podcasts. We're going to do probably 3 of them. The first one will be covering the first, I suppose 10 or so chapters of the book. Basically, we're doing it in thirds. The book has about 330 pages, so we'll be covering just over 100 pages per podcast. So just be aware that that's what's coming up next. But yeah, that's been episode 215 of the Avatar Online podcast. It's been myself and Greg. Thanks for listening, and bye.
Bye-bye.